Hi, I'm Scott Giroux, and in the last video we were looking at my Power Drag and Drop control. And in this video we're going to look at building an interface like this, where you can move tasks around between different people to assign them and take them out of a list on the right here and move them back if you need to. So if you want to find out how to do that, stick around. So the Power Drag and Drop component is a PCF control. And in the last episode, we looked at how you can configure it to create drop zones that you can move items back and forth between, and the concept of a master drop zone. And we were using a set of people. So it kind of looked like this, where you've got different people. So if you have not seen that particular control, then I suggest you go and look at the previous video and look at how I did it there. It's quite straightforward to set up. But what we're going to do is create this user interface, which is using the same drop zone on the left hand side here that we've already built, but then we've got all of these other different drop zones in this calendar view that allows us to then take a list of tasks, which is another drop zone, and then schedule them into each individual of these slots. So the key concept here is that we've actually got two master drop zones. We've got the people, which is one master drop zone, and then we've got our tasks, which is another drop zone. So this is just a list of tasks that are unassigned. And then each of these other areas, each of these other little tiny segments here, these slots, are actually drop zones in themselves. And the zone ID is a combination of the person and the day. And so this enables us to detect which day and which person the task has been dropped onto. So this is the starting point that we have for the app that we're going to be building. And so if you look at the structure here, I've got a screen, which is the scheduler, and then I've got a container that we built on this last time, where you've got a simple container that can hold lots of buttons to hold functions that you can then call as sort of like reusable functions. And then we've got this responsive layout here, and at the root we've got a vertical stack. And then we've got a top area, which allows us to put all that things like the date control. Then we've got a header that's got all of the grid headers, so like the different dates for the different columns. And then we've got a container that holds the people grid, then the calendar grid, and then on the right-hand side, we've got the task grid. Now, the key thing about this is that for the calendar, we need a separate container, because this particular container needs to be able to have scroll bars, because you need to be able to scroll up and down to show the different people. Now, one of the features that I love about Power Apps is the ability to turn on this named formula setting. And so what you will need to do is turn on this named formula. And what this allows us to do is to define constants that previously you would have had to put on app on start or on visible. And so I'm going to use that to go into the app formulas area here. And once you've got that, I'm going to pop in a few constants here. And what these are a set of constants that will be available through all the different screens. So U is going to be the definition of sort of like the spacing between all the different items, and then we've got the cell width, the minimum cell width for the different columns, the height, the grid widths. And so these constants are going to be used in lots of different places. Now, if I can change them here, then all of the different places that use those will get recalculated. So it's really a really useful feature. And so the first thing I want to do is, if I go back to where we left off, I'm just going to copy our grid here of people, and I'm going to pop it into, if we go into the grids area here, I'm going to paste that in and paste like that, and I'm going to move it to the left, and there we go. And so let's make this fill up the entire height. So we come into the height and make it, so what we want to do is define the height of this so that if there is more people than the space available, we want to allow the container to scroll vertically. Now, the great thing, if you look about these containers, they have got the option to set the scrolling, and here we go, horizontal overflow. And we can set the horizontal overflow to hide, vertical overflow to hide, or we can set it to scroll. Actually, now, of course, we need to be able to make the people scroll at the same time as the calendar. So actually, we've got another container here that's going to contain both our people grid and our calendar view. So I'm going to just take this and put it inside this child container here. And so you start to get this sort of nested structure of different containers in order to control the various different responsive aspects of your app, as well as where you have your scroll bar. So if you look at this calendar container here, we've got this set to have scrolling. And so we need to be able to calculate the height of that. And so we can go and simply set this to the number of items, the number of people, multiplied by the height of each of these areas. So I'm going to go and set the height of these based on the template, because if we go into the template here, at the moment it's hard coded to be 32 pixels. So I'm going to set this to be the cell height, which, if you remember, is one of those constants, minus this padding area, because we're going to add in that padding. And that will define it as having number of pixels. So then we want to do is we want to specify the gap between these items of make it U. We should be able to set the height to be the number of people times by that height. We go into the height of this there, and we set this the number of people times the cell height, which is another constant, and we're going to add in a little bit of height, gutter height on the bottom, so that when you scroll down you can see that you're at the bottom. It doesn't just look like there's still more to come. So there we go. Now if we run that, then we should see there we go, we can scroll up and down with all these different people, and there's that gutter height at the bottom, which shows us we're at the bottom of our list, which is really great. So now we've got the height of that. What we do need to do is need to define the headers for our calendar, because if you remember, we've got all these different columns. So in our header here, what we want to do is we want to define we create the different elements. So firstly, we want to have a label which is going to be the people header. And then we're going to add in a layout element, which is going to be a blank horizontal gallery, because what we're going to do is we're going to have a gallery with the repeating sections based on the number of columns we've got. We want to have the height of this to be the height of this area. So I'm going to set the height to be 32, and I'm also going to set the height of our label there. And then we also want to just go and add in one for the task list, which we haven't added in yet. So I'm just going to paste in another one here. Call this task header, like that. And so we'll leave out any text for now, just leave them as blank. So now what we've got is we've got this kind of section, repeating section at the top there. So we need to add in a repeating layout for all the various different days. Now, at the moment, we've got this people list here is just the width we had it before. So let's set this to be the width of that constant we had, which is going to be the people grid width, like that. And also what we need to do is set, of course, the width of the label as well to be the same. There we go. Let's set that to be the people grid width. Okay, like that. Okay, so now you can see it starting to line up. Now we'll also make on the right hand side here, the label to be the task grid width, because you remember, again, we had those as constants. So it's starting to take shape. Now we might display maybe, I don't know, a number of 10, 20, depending on how much space we've got. But I'm going to, for simplicity's sake, just simply say days in range. I'm going to make it 7. So we only ever show 7 days at a time. So what that allows us to do is now, if you go to this gallery, which I'm going to make sure it fills the full width of so flexible width, like that. And we're going to make sure that this shows a number of, we're going to use the sequence function, which basically creates a collection of the number of items you give it. So this is going to create a collection of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so we want to make sure that this is going to fill up the whole width of this. We've got the minimum height. We want to make sure that the template padding is just going to be set that to U. And then we're going to go and insert into that let's go and put in a label, and we're going to align this to be right at the beginning. Let's make this at the moment, let's just leave it as 150, but let's put the description of this based on the starting date that we selected plus the day. So on the top here, what we want to do is we want to go and add in a date picker, because we want to enable the user to select a particular date, and then we show 7 days from that date. So we're going to say the height of this is going to be 32, like that. And we're going to give it name, date time picker, start date, like that. And so what this enables us to do is now in the label for this particular text box, we can put a formula in here to show the date. So if we put this, what we're showing here is we're saying that we are adding the date, adding the number of days from the selected date time. And of course it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need to subtract 1 because we want to add 0 days onto the first date, and we're just formatting it as a short date. And we want to center that. So it's kind of starting to take shape. But if you notice, what we've got here is we're not showing 7 days. So we need to calculate how much space we've got and set the width of this to be dynamic. So what we want to do is a calculation based on the screen width divided by the number of days. And so the way that we do that is using the actual template width. So on this gallery, let's call this gal day header, and let's look at the template size. So the template size at the moment is just the standard template size based on when you first insert it. But if we put in a formula here, so what we're doing is we're saying that the width of the whole gallery, because remember the gallery is going to expand based on the available space because we're in a responsive container, and we're just going to remove this padding that we've got, and we're going to divide it by the days in the range, and then also subtract the padding. We should now see that the width is now showing based on the available space, and so we've got these different columns, which is great. And so all we need to do now is add in the different days, because we've got the headers, but we also need to add in the days. So we come over to our container here, and we've got a button called load tasks. And again, this is just allowing us to run some functionality that we can call from lots of different places. So we could call this every time the date changes, or on visible of this screen. So what we've got is a collection that we're creating called cold days slots. And this is going to contain a row for each of the people, because we've already got our collection of people. That's what we created in the last video. So go back and see that if you haven't already got that. And then for each of these rows, we've got a reference to the person. And then we've also got another collection that's sort of embedded inside that row for each of the days. So we are saying for each of the days in range, go and create this little structure here. And the key thing about this is that we've obviously got the person ID and we've got the day, but what we've got is a zone ID. And this zone ID is a kind of an amalgamation, as we said before, of the day and the person. So that makes a unique zone ID, so that when we're dragging our items between these different day slots, you've got this unique ID that allows us to identify where it's being dragged. So now that when we run that, what that means is, let's go and make this be run on change of our date time. So if we look at our date time on change here, we can say select function load tasks. So let's just go and do that. So let's just change it like that. So you can see all of the different dates are changed across the top. And we've also got, we should now have our cold tasks. So I'm going to go and add it in. Let's name this the people. And we're going to go and add in now another gallery, so a vertical gallery, because we want a row for each of these different people. So a blank vertical gallery like that. And because this is a responsive container, it's kind of stacked onto the right-hand side, which is great. And we're going to make the data source of this col tasks. No, col day slots. That's what it was. So we can now have a row for each of these different people, and then inside that what we're going to do is add in an additional gallery for all the different day columns. So the template size, because this is a repeating vertical, so we're going to make the day size the cell height, and that's a constant which we already used when we set it inside the people list here. And we're going to set the template padding to be U, as we did before. And what we'll do now is go and add in, let's call this people, like that. And inside gal people, I'm going to go and add in another gallery. And this is going to be a blank, a horizontal gallery, like that. And so we'll position this so it is right up against the 0, 0. And let's set the template padding to be U, as we did before. And we can now define the items. The data source for this is that it's going to be this item. And because we bound this to the day slots, we've got for each of the rows, we've also got this sub collection called days. And so that means that it will repeat for each of the days. Now we'll define the template layout. So we need to make sure that the width of each of these template items is the same as the gal day header. So if we go into the gallery, let's call this gallery gal days slots, like that. And we'll say the template size here is going to be the same as the template size for the day headers, because we already calculated that. So template size, and this is great when you template width, when you are you've done calculations, you can kind of refer to them on other controls, which is really useful. And we need to make sure this obviously fills up the available space. So let's make sure that the width of this is the parent width, like that. And so that expands to use the whole available space. So this is now repeating. And of course, we've already got the height of this. So we know that the people is the height. So I'm going to set the height of this to be the same as the people. So it will expand to the full height. And then we can say, we don't want to show any scroll bars. So we'll go and say here, show scroll bars off, like that. And so now if we go in and let's go and put in another drag item inside here, what that means is that we'll now have a drag slot for each of these different items, and add it in there. Okay, and then we can set that to be the position of that to be 0, 0, which it seems to be done already, which is great. So there you go. You've got all the different slots, and we can scroll up and down, but the height of this still isn't actually setting correctly, because did you see that? That was, I was scrolling on this I was scrolling independently on this slots independently from the parent. So we want to make sure that this is actually, the height of this is expanding. So make sure that the people height of this height is the right height, and the day slots, and that is going to be, make sure that it's not set to be a flexible height. So we go into the height here and just set it to be that people height. So it is going to fill the entire, so the minimum height. So it forces it. There you go. So we've got the full height, but there's something going on here, is because you see this padding means that it's all slightly out of sync here, and that's because we've got too much padding going on. So we need to kind of remove that. So you can see we need to add in a little bit of padding at the top there, and then each of these rows here has got too much padding. So we'll remove it from the inner gallery. So let's go to the days, and we'll find that the height of that's the template padding, like that. template size, the height, and we'll say that is the parent height. So it makes sure it's the correct height. And then we'll make the template padding 0. That should bring it in line. Okay, so that's a little bit better. We still need to add a little bit of padding across the top. And luckily, this has got the drag and drop, power drag and drop has got some padding. So we can say the padding is U, at the padding top is U, and the padding on the left, let's make that 2U, make it a little bit nicer. So good. So now we've got the zones defined. We need to now create the master on the right hand side, and we also need to create the individual zone setup for all these different slots here so that we can drag the different tasks onto those slots. So let's go into our function that we are loading the tasks, the slots, so this load tasks. And on the bottom of this, we're going to go and create an additional piece of function where we're going to load into this call tasks. And I've got a table called project tasks. And I'm going to just simply load all of these in. Probably eventually we want to have some kind of filtering going on, you know, date or project filtering. But I'm going to create an additional column called zone. And I'm going to, by default, set them to be unassigned. Eventually, we'll want to be able to define which person and day they're assigned to. But for now, we're just going to say they're all unassigned. And I'm also going to create this task event here. And remember last time we looked at how you reset the drag and drop zones. So if I take that task event and put it in to my power drag and drop for each of these slots, there is an event property, so I can pop it in there. And I'm going to go and create the actual list of tasks as well. So if I go and put in my drag and drop component, there we go. Now I want to set this to be the full height of my container. So there we go. And I'll set the same thing. So the event will be the same as we just created. So it allows us to reset it. So now if I go and change this date to just to kind of load in the just particular set of tasks. And now if I go and change the items here to be called tasks like that. And remember before we have to define, we have to designate the zone and the ID column. So the ID column is quite easy because that's going to be the unique task ID. So each of these, so project task ID, that's the unique ID for this item because each task has got a unique ID. But the zone column, where it's actually located, is just that custom one we've created. And I just need to go and add in which field we want to display. So I'm going to create name like that. So there we go. We've got all these different, it's not looking pretty right now because we're going to make that a little bit pretty in a minute. But what we want to do is make that, generally I've made that we need to do make this width, the parent width. So it looks a bit nicer like that. Oh, no, parent template width. So that it aligns up better. So there we go. And now each of these items, what we can do is we can also set the same tasks for each of the different slots. But we'll set this zone here to be unassigned like that. So the zone ID for all these different right-hand side tasks is unassigned, but each of these slots, the drop zone ID will be this item, the zone of that particular slot. Then we need to do the same thing. We need to set the column for the ID and the zone. So that's going to be dev1 project task ID. And then we also want to set that to be zone like that. And that's not project task ID like that. That should be better. And okay, so, and we need to set the items to be called tasks like that. So suddenly it all kind of starts to look a bit more like a scheduling board. Well, let's make the background for each of these different items a little nicer. So let's set it to be sort of like a lighter shade of gray. Let's set that like that. So there we go. So we've got nicer, slightly nicer gray color, but I can't drag anything yet. Notice there's some bigger spaces here. That probably means that I'm not making the width of these expand out. There you go. So the width of this is not. So we need to say parent.template width to make them expand to be the full width. So if I now run that, that looks a bit, yeah, there we go, expands out a little bit better. So I need to make this drag and droppable. And the way that we do that is we nominate this right-hand side to be the master zone. But in order to also do that, we need to define the other drop zones, which of course is going to be a list of all the different drop zones in the day slots. So if we set the drop zone ID on the right-hand side to be a concatenation of all of the different day slot zones. And so we're using an ungroup function here, because what this does is that if you remember, we've got a nested set of days. So for each person, we've got another property, which is the nested days of collection. So by using ungroup, what it allows us to do is to take each of the days for each of the people rows and then flatten them down and then grab the zone property and then use comma to string them out into one big string. So you can see here it's calculated them as one big string. So now if we set this as our master zone like that on the right hand side, with any luck it should allow us to start to drag them in to the different items. Notice I can drag them into here, which is not right. You know, I can drag these people into there. And of course, the reason that is if we look at this item here, the drop zone we originally used for our people is unassigned. So I'm going to set the drop zone to be people like that. And I'm going to, let's run that and then reset it to a different zone like that. And I need to go and actually run the load people as well. So we have a function called load people. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on visible of our screen, I'm going to run select function load people and also select function load tasks. So when we are loading, when we're moving onto the screen, it goes and does both of those. So now you should load that people. Why is it not showing those people? Oh, of course, because if we look at the load people, we've created this zone here to be unassigned. So I'll put people there and then go away from the screen and come back again. And we should now, there we go, we've got the people. So now we can't drag the people into these areas. So we've got now sort of two distinct groups, but we can drag the tasks into these items here. So all we need to do is kind of tidy up now a little bit of this, a bit of the formatting. The first thing we'll do is make these tasks look a bit nicer, because just like the people, we've got a nice sort of format here. On the right hand side of the task are just using the standard formatting that you get with this component. So we're going to use another template in here. So we come over to our template area, item template, and I can pop a template, a simple HTML template. Now, if you haven't watched the previous video, again, go back and review that on how to build an HTML template. So we'll select this, and I'm just going to paste this in and look at it. It's a really simple template. It's just simply adding a little bit of color, a border on the left, and it's using the handlebars formatting to grab in the name of the task. A little bit simpler than the template that we were using for the people, which was kind of showing the image and all of those kind of things. But that means that it does now give us, oh, we've got a little bit of issue here with our template. Let's go and take a look at what that's going on there. Item template. We've got some double. There we go. That should be a bit better. And now look at that. Okay, good. So now we can pop that in there. And let's make a background color on this to be white so that it looks a bit more consistent with the layout. There we go. So we can now go and take these in. And if I change the date, it will then reset all of those tasks like that. So the only slight formatting we need to do is just fix this top border here and make sure that it doesn't scroll. You can see there it's slightly out of alignment there, because what's happening there is that the gallery is just slightly bigger than the area available to it. So it's kind of scrolling it along. So each of these items here, the drag and drop item here and the drag and drop here, they've got borders. So we don't really want any of those borders because the borders are all going to be handled by the actual background or the item template. So I'm going to set the border width to be 0 on all of these items. And there's a border width around the whole thing. And then there's also an item border width as well. So I'm going to get rid of the item border width to make that 0. And we'll do the same on the individual items. So item border width 0, and then the overall border width is 0. Also, make sure that the height of this is going to be set to be cell height, like that. So it will fill the available space. And we also need to make sure that it's going to be removing the padding as well, so that we get, so there we go, that's looking a lot nicer. But we do need to put a little bit of border radius going on here. And so if we set the border width, border radius, let's set that to 4. There it has a little bit of a nicer border radius, which is good. And then of course, remember, we need to add on a little space at the right hand side here, so we don't get that dragging scrolling. And of course, the reason that is going to be is that this has got a scroll bar, whereas the top doesn't have a scroll bar. So we need to compensate for that. So if we make the width of this area here, the template size, at the moment we're just saying the width of the item minus the padding. What we also need to do is we need to take into consideration the scroll bar here. So let's just let's add in 4 times U to give it a little bit of space. So you can see we've catered for the space. So let's just change it to be 2. So there we go. That's a little better now. So we should now not have that problem of, so it's kind of like a gutter on the right hand side. But I'm noticing that the tasks are actually scrolling with the calendar, which is wrong because we want to have the calendar scrolling in a different way to the tasks. And the reason that is that the tasks are added to the calendar stack, whereas actually we want to add them to the root stack. Let's paste them there outside of the calendar. So there we go, on the other side of the calendar. And this is what's great about these responsive grids. They're so easy to have these kind of responsive layouts. So we've now got the ability to scroll the tasks separately to scrolling the calendar. So it's getting there. We're almost having a schedule board. And in the next episode, we're going to look at how we can read these tasks in from the Dataverse table. And then we're also going to look at how can we then update the Dataverse table once we've dragged these different tasks onto the board. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been a lot longer than perhaps previous videos, but we've covered an awful lot. And I would really appreciate it if you can subscribe to my channel if you found this useful. And until next time, have a great rest of your day.